All right, today I'm so excited to have my friend Nadia Hassan. She is an uber talented designer. She has been licensing her work for years with companies like Design and Paper Magic. And she recently made the transition from a freelance designer into full-time design work. So I have been super obsessed with her aesthetic, her cool aesthetic on Instagram, and all the challenges and things that she does for years. And so I'm really excited to have a chance to chat with her and get to know more about her background. So welcome, Nadia.
Hi.
So tell me, start with kind of the background. Like, how did you discover surface pattern design and illustration and kind of get into doing that for yourself?
Oh, that's a story that I should know by now, but sometimes I feel like it's been so long ago. I'm always like reaching back into the distant past. Like, how did this happen? My first introduction to surface pattern design came sort of by chance. Like it was a school assignment in college. So because I went to school for art and for design, and I got an assignment that involved patterns, and I just it was kind of my first introduction to like patterns and surface design in any real capacity, and I just fell in love. But then it just kind of lay dormant for a while. I didn't have anywhere to put it, didn't really quite know what to do with it. So but I kind of always had that that love for it. And then I feel like there's so much of my surface design journey was like luck, because I felt like lucky to find it in college, and then lucky that Spoonflower was a thing, the print on demand fabric company. And back in their early days, I think I've been with Spoonflower since like 2008 or 9, like whenever they like first came on the scene. And that gave me an outlet and like a place to practice, and to like a reason to keep making patterns and like surface design type work, even though I had no other outlet for it, because at that time I think I might have been working at a bank as a teller. And then I got a job as a web designer working for UNC Greensboro, but that was very different from like illustration and surface design. So I still didn't have like a real purposeful outlet for the patterns that I like to make, but I loved making them. And Spoonflower gave me a place to like keep doing it. They had like a weekly design challenge, and I think I did that.
That's what
people
really love Spoonflower, and those challenges are on, and I get it, because those challenges are really on trend. They're really, of the print on demand spectrum, Spoonflower is definitely a really great one. So that's cool that you got to do that.
I think for 2 years, I pretty much did every one of them, just because again, I didn't know what else to do with this urge I felt to like create this work. And with Spoonflower, you have an audience, a theme, a deadline. You can sell your work, or at least make it available for sale. It doesn't guarantee anyone will buy it, but at least you had the option. It was the closest I felt like I was going to get to a surface design career, because this was this was pre-Instagram. This was pre a lot of things on the internet that we take for granted now, and the surface design industry was still really opaque and kind of hard to get into. And you need to go to a trade show, or like there were just certain things that like were not
barriers to entry.
Yes, a lot of barriers to entry that have, at least if they're not gone now necessarily, but they've been like softened a little bit. And I think so Spoonflower played a huge role in my where I am now, just because that was the place that I had. That was my playground, and I took full advantage of it for a long time. But then eventually my my portfolio and my obsession just got so big that I started looking for, even though I had like a full-time job as a web designer, I just my heart and my mind were really focused. Like everything was focused on my illustration work and surface design work. And I was like, well, there's got to be a way to like people make a living doing this. Like, and there were some people starting to like offer clues into like how you can do this for yourself. I think like Jessica Swift at the time had like a book or like something that was here's how I like broke into this industry, or something to that effect. So I was seeing other people who were like trying to lift that curtain a little bit, and I was like, maybe I could do this. And that's when I started looking for an agent.
So when was that? Like 2012, 2010?
2013, I think. Yeah.
2015?
2013.
13, yeah, okay.
13. And
Just trying to do the timeline along with my own timeline.
I know. Trust me, Ellie, what is time? Yeah, so around 2013, I think that's when I found my agent, and yeah, so.
Awesome. And so then were you still working, did you continue to work with the web as a web designer, or did you just like go full force with your agent?
I kept my full-time job for at least a year after finding an agent. If I could do it again, I would have kept my job longer. I would have, but you know, you don't know what you don't know, right? And I think, you know, for me at the time, I just felt like this is something I have to do. And I was just trying to weigh, like, you know, how, like, I was working like 80 hours a week, basically.
Yeah, it's really hard to
portfolio and working a full-time job. And there just came a point where I was like, you know, I really just want to be in this with both feet. And like, I wouldn't say that I regret leaving my job when I did. I do feel like it was the right choice. I think just in hindsight, it's like I can see how it might have been easier if I had a little more money saved up, or if I had done things a little differently. But I also just don't know what would have happened if I hadn't. You know, sometimes you can't have both things. You have to choose.
Yeah, I totally.
Yeah. And but there is definitely, if anyone's, you know, like staying with the job that puts food on your table as long as possible, there's nothing wrong with that. But there are also, you know, if you feel like jumping in with both feet, that's fine too. It's just you know, it's just different costs that come with the option. But yeah, I think I say that just in hindsight, you know, with 7 years looking back, be like, maybe I could have stayed longer. But honestly, like I maybe I couldn't have. I do think the workload was getting to be a bit much, and I really wanted to commit and see if I could make this work. And so I felt like, you know what, let me just focus just on this and see what happens. And it was a risk, but you know, again, not one that I'm sorry that I took.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think if you're working 80 hours a week, then you're tapped out, you know what I mean? And I think, I mean, web design is definitely a different animal than surface design, but there is still some aspect of like, I mean, I guess it's a little bit different of a creative brain, but I just think about like I remember when I was working in-house, and my second in-house job was, you know, working for a home textiles company. And we did a lot of like more traditional work and just nothing that was really like fun and bright and my style. Right. So I had this like creative energy that I was not getting out, even though I was designing all day. And so I was like designing like cards in my spare time and stuff because I had this creative energy. And then I got a new job at the Gap, and I'm doing Baby Gap, and everything was like adorable and young and fun and colorful, which is again right up my alley. And suddenly I stopped doing I didn't do any design in my spare time because my whole creative brain was being used. All the juices were being used in my job. So like, I almost feel like for some people having a job that's not in a related field, whether it's part-time or full-time, as like your supplementary income can be so useful, because otherwise you're using all the juice. You know what I mean?
Well, I can totally relate to that, and we'll get to that later, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, like when your job is creatively fulfilling in some ways, that's wonderful, but also it's like that's going to take all the creative energy you have. It's going to be it. It's going to be toward the job and not toward, you know, whatever else, you know, that you want to do, personal or but anyway.
So you signed with a licensing agent, and then how, you know, I've talked with many other artists about their sort of the agent artist relationship. And what I have learned is that everyone has a different experience. Even people who have the same agent have a different experience. Right. You know, it's such a partnership, or, you know, it's meant to be a partnership, and it that can be good and bad in certain ways. How long were you first of all, like how long were you working with your agency? And did you license on your own before that? Or was it once you started with your agent, you started licensing?
So I was with my agent for 6 years, and prior to finding my agent, I had licensed a little bit here and there. You know, some of my first clients who are still clients, and I love them dearly. They found me on Instagram back when that was like a thing that sometimes happened. I don't know if that happens as much these days, but like, you know, the world was a different place
Yeah,
many years ago. And so I had a little licensing experience, but I applied to just one agency because it was the one that I felt like had the you know, best fit with my art, and you know, they took me on. And I didn't know what I didn't know, like, because you can't, right? Again, that's just like, you cannot know things that you have context or experience with. So, you know, and that's totally fine. But like you said, an agent artist relationship is a partnership. I mean, like, so it's in some ways it's like a marriage, you know, like there's so many questions you need to ask and so many things that you need to consider, but like, how can you know that until you've actually experienced what it's like to have an agent and what it's like to make work in that way?
Totally.
There's a lot of benefits to having an agent. Number one, I mean, the biggest one I think is obviously their access to clients. Like, that's why you have an agent, you know, so that you can make work and someone else can deal with everything involved with marketing the work, licensing the work, you know, getting it in front of people, all the stuff that you as an artist may not want to do because you're busy making art. And I mean, that's, you know, I think the main benefit and reason you would have an agent. But also, like, agents tend to have like trend reports that you can, you know, use to inspire your work. And you know, they will often provide like direction or suggestions, or like, work on this, work on that, or, you know. So I think for some people the relationship is perfect because like they really just want, some artists just want to make stuff, and it's like, if someone's kind of doing all the parts of the job that you don't want to do, it can be really great. But also, you know, there's some like boutique agencies, of course, but a lot of agencies are, you know, working with mass market clients, and the work needs to be extremely commercially appropriate.
Yeah.
And working for like a particular type of audience and market, and it's going to shape the work that you can do. And it, you know, if you have like a really quirky style, or like sometimes those edges get sanded down, and you know, like, it just sort of depends on how much of your work and personality and self you're comfortable maybe tamping down in favor of having work that actually sells and makes money. And I mean, that's not every artist has to do that, but
that's a really, really interesting point. And that's something that I feel like I've been kind of hung up on lately. I don't know, hung up is the word, but like, I am very I'm very commercial, and I have no problem with that. And because I know that that's the place of art for products, right? And there are those, like, especially in so licensing is a little, you know, different than sort of freelance work. And I do both, but I don't make most of my art money from licensing. I make it most from freelance. So I have a bit of a different perspective. But like, you know, I have never been sort of like a fine artist or someone who really values like my voice and my art voice more than just like getting paid for my art, basically. And so I feel like, you know, a lot of people get into this industry and they're excited about, oh, like, I learned how to put a pattern together, or I figured out how to work Illustrator or whatever that is. And they're just, you know, excited to play around. But then the missing piece that I keep seeing is like, hey, like, it has to be marketable. It has to be. And I know that it's not always easy to know what's marketable. I mean, I still don't always know what's marketable, obviously, but like, you know, some of, you know, people's like early portfolios, you're like, have you even, you know, you want to get on bedding, have you looked at a bed in the last 3 years, like, right. You know, that, for example. And it's like, this is something I've been harping on a lot lately with just, you know, my YouTube videos and all this stuff. It's like the idea of being marketable. But when you have a really strong voice, and I think, Nadia, you have a definite aesthetic. That's what's, you know, really drawn me to your Instagrams and to you as a person and an artist, is like, that isn't always the direction you want to go. So how did you, you know, feel about that, basically, like getting sanded down, let's say?
I mean, I was perfectly willing to be sanded down, because kind of like you, it's like, I understood what I was signing up for to some extent. I understood that it was a choice I was making, and that like, I would still rather make art, even if it's not like the most expressive, truest form of my soul. That's fine.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like I was totally okay with that. But even being okay with that, it was still difficult, not from like an ego perspective or from like, I don't want to, but just it's hard to see what the trends are and figure out, well, how do I do that? Like, even though it's really easy. And for some people, I think it is. For a few folks, it actually, I think, comes really naturally. But for me, it was a struggle. I mean, it took me probably maybe even through maybe like my third year of having an agent before I felt like I really was starting to get the hang of like, here's a trend being presented to me. What do I do with that information? How do I turn that into artwork that is original, but also still commercial and something that I'm interested in making? And that's like putting those pieces together. Again, it seems like it should be easy, but for me, it really was not. It took a long time to like learn how to integrate all of that thinking. And then now I can do it in my sleep, 7 years later. But yeah, like it took a really long
practice.
time.
Yeah,
it took so much practice. And I think that was the thing that maybe threw me the most when I got an agent, because I think people think, like for me at least, I was thinking like, oh, I'm gonna get an agent and then like all my problems will be solved.
Same. And hopefully people, if anyone's been watching my videos right and is watching right now, hopefully by now you know enough that is not true. But let's talk about it.
Yeah, like at the time, I was like, okay, I'll get an agent, and then like boom, done. Like surface design career achieved.
Yeah.
And I mean, like your agent can put your work in front of people and they can help, but like depending on how many artists your agent is managing and like how big the staff is, and like agencies come in all different shapes and sizes and forms. I mean, like my agent had a number, like there were a lot of other artists, so there were a lot of us sort of competing for time and attention, both her time and attention and the time and attention of prospective clients. And so most of us had different styles, but there was definitely some overlap. And so trying to navigate like even the competition within your own your agent is just trying to, their job is to get clients to buy work, and like obviously they should care about you and your success, but I mean the agent's success or the agency's success is kind of like the main thing. And so you still have to do a little bit of like, or at least in my case, I still had to make sure that my work, it wasn't a magic bullet. There was still a lot I had to consider, and a lot that I still had to work really hard to try to understand what was going on. And I think that's true in a lot of different situations, but it just surprised me because it was not, again, the solution. That it's not a job, it's you have to have so much discipline and self-direction and confidence and all kinds of things that can be hard to come by if you're just starting out. Or I mean, I had a few years of experience, but no real licensing experience. I would say I was pretty inexperienced at the time, especially compared to now. And it's just, again, you have to get experience one way or the other.
Yeah.
I think it was probably the right thing to do, but it was still, I think, a lot harder than I anticipated it would be. And, I learned a lot from the experience, but I spent a lot of time thinking about, how different it was from what my expectations were. But, I did try to also adjust my expectations as I went along, because there were some other folks who struggled even more than I did with the agent experience and some of the drawbacks. But I just tried to keep perspective and be like, this isn't perfect, but I'm learning a lot, and this is necessary. I'm going to learn it here. Or I'm going to learn it somewhere else. I mean,
I like that. I really
don't think, there's any way, I think, to get around some of those growing pains as a commercial artist. I think, it's like just whatever you can get out of whatever situation you're in, get it. Because again, it's not going somewhere else or having a different agent even, or having a job or whatever else you have, you're still going to have to learn some things the hard way. So and I think, it was, for a while, I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I like not getting this? Or why is this so hard for me? But really, I don't think it was just me that was struggling, or just me that was, having a hard time in that transition. I think it's hard for a lot of people. And
I think so too.
You compare yourself to people who are more experienced, or, also not everybody wants to talk about what it's like, or
Not everyone wants to put their business out there.
Right, sure. And like, as someone
But
who,
it's true. I mean, because, we have to, you do have to be careful, and, it's like, I am someone who loves transparency, but even still, like, there's only so much, you still have to maintain relationships, and, it can be like, I always talk kind of about the whisper network. It's like, I love having conversations with artists off camera as well, because
Right.
I get other information that I'm not going to get on camera. And I understand why. I'm not, I never pressure my guests to like spill their guts about anything, but it's like you learn so much just having friends in the industry, and knowing what's really, touching base with them, and getting sort of the behind the scenes. And I think another point, as you were talking, that I was thinking is that, I love how you framed your whole experience as, you just have to learn one way or another, because sometimes I feel like people, they hear all this, now there is, you're absolutely right that it's way less opaque. There's lots of people talking about, finding an agent, what the industry is like, this, that, the other, myself obviously included. And I think people hear all these, warnings or suggestions or whatever, and it kind of puts them into a place of inaction, right? If you're hearing this conversation, you knew nothing about agents, you might be like, oh, it's like a partnership, it's like a marriage. Oh, like that means I need to like be looking for my agent and like interviewing them like it's you're gonna be your husband or whatever. And that makes you feel too scared to ever commit to anything, right? But sometimes you just have to dive in, head first, and there's almost, there's no way to know until as you kind of been saying. So I love that, thought that no matter what, it is a learning experience. We all have to kind of get through, everyone's a beginner at some point, and we all kind of have to get through some of those like, get past some of those roadblocks on our own, despite all the advice that's out there.
and I think the counterpoint to the seriousness of the relationship, or like the seemingly high stakes, is that like, nothing, almost no decision is can't be reversed or can't be changed. If one path doesn't work, you can always try a different path. And then, like, I always try to tell myself on days when I'm feeling maybe a little more like grumpy, or I don't want to do whatever it is that I'm doing, it's like, no one's making me do this, like, this is a choice that I am making. I have so much agency, and I think it's important for me personally. I have to hang on to that on days when I'm like, ugh, or like when I feel put upon because I don't want to do Christmas and because it's July, or whatever it is that I'm
totally
grumpy about that day. It's like, again, no one's making me do this. No one, like, you have to, perspective is so important, and just finding ways to like, what can you take away from whatever your situation is, whether you're just starting out or whether you're more experienced, like what can you take away that is beneficial? And sometimes not everything's fun. Even when your job is fun. And I think that is kind of a weird thing, that can happen when you make what you love into the thing that you do for money. Your relationship to it can shift. But it's important to still find ways to make it fun, but also it's okay when sometimes it isn't fun. It's like, is it still more fun than something else that you might have to do to make a living? Probably. And like the expectation that it's going to be fun and easy all the time, I think is it's a dangerous one. And the quicker you accept that is not going to be the case, and that it is normal for there to be
ups and downs.
Ups and downs. It's not struggle, but it's still work, like you don't get to be good at something without working hard, and you don't get to a point of expertise without starting out in a place of knowing nothing. Without time.
Exactly.
Time and effort. It's sustained time and effort.
I think we all want to fast forward, right? With our careers.
Absolutely.
Even still, it's so weird to me to like look back and realize like, oh, okay, like I've got 2 decades of experience. 2 decades, I'm old. But like, it's like, that's amazing. And I'm sure there are people who are like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Like, I can't wait. But also, and they want to fast forward, but I'm also like, oh, I wish that I was at a certain, I mean, it's always, you just have to put the time in, really. I'm trying to think there was something else, but because I've been really, the whole idea that it's a fun job, like, which I was just yesterday writing some emails because I'm relaunching one of my classes, successful licensing collections, a live version in September. And one of the things I was hitting upon is like, yeah, you know, I get my kids' teacher I sent in a sample rug that I had because they needed like a welcome mat for their classroom. And she was like, oh my God, you made this? That's so cool. Like, what an awesome job, you know? And it's like, you get that all the time. How much is like, oh, that's so, you make greeting cards? Like, wow. And it's like, I get it, but also, you know, we all know who have worked in the industry, like it's super fun. And I always just go along with it, but it's also really hard. It's not all like, you know, sunshine and roses. So because art is hard, right? It is. It's
hard.
You know,
It's so subjective. No one can tell you whether you're doing it right or wrong. They can, whether, like, I guess the mark of that is to someone buy your work, but even that's not
it's not a direct line. It never is.
Isn't. And it's like, you know, sometimes I miss my job as a bank teller where I just counted money, you know, and like my drawer was balanced at the end of the day, and that told me if I did a good job or not. It was so, you know, straightforward, because sometimes the open-endedness and the infinite nature of like making art, you know, like everything is possible at all times, and that can be really overwhelming. And your job as an artist is to find that one teeny tiny narrow pathway forward for one assignment or for your style or for your career or whatever. But like, you know, you're like trying to hang on to this like one very narrow idea or path or whatever, when you're bombarded by everything all the time.
I know.
And, you know, like, again, we chose this career in some ways. Sometimes I feel like I didn't. I feel like, you know, it's like I became possessed by and I don't have a choice. But no, like it is a choice and I love it. But just because I love it doesn't mean that it isn't a struggle. In some ways, maybe that makes it harder, because like artists tend to love their job and their work so much. You can't have this like kind of casual attitude that you might have about being a bank teller or, you know, something else where you're like, you know, it's whatever. I mean, I think we care so deeply about what we're doing and doing it well and doing it right and finding a voice and like just all this stuff. And at the end of the day, you know, I do try to, again, just relax a little and be like, you know what, it doesn't matter. Like, not like in a dismissive
but
way.
yeah, I mean, it's true that I'm with that. I'm with that attitude.
I'm not saving lives over here.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Take pressure off. Don't add pressure that doesn't need to be there, I suppose.
I love that. I really love that. So that's a good segue in. It's like, you know, it's not always an easy job, but one thing that I have really admired about following you is your like clear love for like creative play, right? You have a history on your Instagram of participating in 100-day project, participating in Inktober's, like all these Instagram challenges and some self-directed ones. And I mean, I think even anyone watching, just looking at your background full of fun, bright, colorful, you know, everything, it can understand that clearly you have sort of a playful sensibility, which I'm obsessed with. So the question I have for you is, do you have any tips for those of us who aren't so great at making creative play a priority? Because I definitely have that issue.
I am always a little hesitant to offer tips because I don't ever want my tips to come across as like, you know, I don't know what everyone's life is like in there. I think
right. Well, how has it worked for you then? Let's put it on a personal, no pressure.
For the 7 years that I was freelancing, for the first couple, I don't think I played as much just because I was trying to get my footing, and I was just so focused on that. But then eventually I was like, you know what? My life is currently in progress right now, like every day, and I can get out of it whatever I choose to get out of it, and play is just so important to me. And I'm like, you know what, there is no point in taking on the stress and uncertainty of a freelance, you know, creative career without also fully indulging in the benefits that are available, which is I can do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do it, and no one can tell me not to. Yes. Now that's not true. We all know that's not actually true. I mean,
yeah, but people do forget it, and it's good that you took yourself out of that.
For me, it was just, you know, kind of a promise I made to myself, or just I was like, well, you struck this bargain, or you made this choice, you're walking this freelance path, which it can be stressful, and, you know, financially it can be uncertain. I'm like, well, if I'm taking on the stress, I'm going to also fully take on the freedom and the benefits and indulge in those. And so I just kind of, it's like, I'm making time to play, and like, I don't care what anyone thinks of that, and I don't really care like what the consequences are up to a certain point. And at first it was a little scary because it does feel like, oh, I'm like wasting time. But as a creative, any creative exercise, it's almost impossible to waste time if you're an artist or a creative of some type, because whatever you're doing is expanding your ways of thinking about the world and expanding your mind in whatever way, and your skill set potentially. And so it might be a roundabout way, but probably if you're playing, you are preparing yourself for the next, project or the next evolution of your style. And again, it can feel scary to like not be busy in a way that is like, oh, I'm doing client work or I'm making this work for freelance, but like a ton of my play project, not right away, but eventually, like a lot of my playtime became work that was licensed, or clients would ask about, oh, I saw you did this, can you do something similar for me? And that was one of the most exciting things to happen in my career, is when the things that I was doing for fun became the things that people were asking for to license and put on products. And again, that was not an overnight thing. So like I made the commitment to play first, and blocked out the time. Now if you have kids, or if you have a different lifestyle than I have, I'm just one person, I live alone, and like I have a lot more freedom and autonomy than maybe some people do. But that doesn't mean that you can't put play into your life. I think some people just need the permission that like play is not wasteful. Play is something that it replenishes and refreshes you, and allows you to make, I think I couldn't reach new heights in my style and career if I didn't take that time to just kind of play around and explore and have that fun, and like get rid of the pressure for a minute. Because when you have all that pressure on you, like I feel like you just default to whatever and whatever is efficient. You're like,
yes, and that's the problem that I have. That's why I've been saying it for like years, and it's not that I'm just not good at starting habits. Like I'm not consistent in the way like that you have been consistent and stuff. I mean, I guess I can be. I guess I'm just not like making it as the priority that I should. But I really feel like my creativity is like now, I have always said I'm not a fine artist. I'm a commercial artist, but now I feel like I get in my design, I call it my design brain. It's like, I get so like, yeah, the efficiency and the designing and the like, what's the end goal gets way in the way of like, what's the expression, what's the fun, what's like, feels cool, like whatever. So that's the thing that you do so well. And I know too, like I know in my heart that can lead to paid work, and even if it doesn't, it leads to all these benefits that you're talking about, as far as learning your new skills and stuff like that. I know that, but yeah, and still
it also, like, play can be a luxury. For me, I decided that it was going to be a necessity, but I think that might have been I don't know that everyone can make that decision in the way that I was able to make, and like stubbornly stick to that decision. And I also joked a lot. I was like, this is why I'm poor, because a lot of time
I'm out here with Q-tips and ink.
I mean, it was a joke, but it kind of wasn't. I mean, that was what I chose to prioritize. My goal has never been to be like, the money's important because I need to keep my lights on and like pay my rent and stuff, but it just doesn't motivate me in the way that like having the experience of being like in that flow state and being fully immersed in my work. I mean, that's just like such a lovely gift, and like that is important to me. And so I just kind of structured my day and my like artistic career around being able to have that. And I think whatever your priority is, that's where things are going to go. And for me, the priority was like playtime. And so I mean, the money did come sort of, but that was my goal, was not like going at, like, I could have spent my time marketing myself, probably should have, spent my time going after like clients. But yeah, I don't know, I kind of had this more like meandering way of approaching it, but that worked for me. And I don't know that I'd recommend it, for everyone, but it is an option that's available to you. And you can also work playtime in a way that's a little more like bite-sized.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So when I reached out to you to interview you, I learned something that I did not realize, which is that you recently started a full-time design job. You're off the freelance circuit, you're into the full-time world, and I am obsessed with this topic because, or this life decision or whatever, because not that it's my business, but I'm very curious about it because, you know, after having been freelance for so long, personally, you know, people always kind of ask me like, would you ever go back, and would you ever, and I would have a really hard time making that choice, which is a privilege, I know for sure, but you know, there is, you know, it's a real lifestyle shift. But obviously there are so many benefits to working a full-time job. So tell me how that opportunity kind of came around, and why was like the right time now for you to hop on the freelance full-time bus.
So again, you know, kind of like with the serendipity of a spoonflower, this was like one of those things where a friend sent me a job listing. She's like, you know, this got sent to me. I don't know why. It seems like something that would be good for you. And like, I wasn't actively, like, the furthest thing from my mind was like looking for a job. I was pretty happy with my freelance situation, and, you know, had some momentum going, and wasn't planning to change that. But this was with a company that I've admired for a long time. So like, I don't think that she knew what she was sending me. She's just like, oh, this job sounds like you. And I saw it and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I've admired this company's work for a long time. Like, I'm gonna apply for this job, even though it seemed a little silly because the company is actually based on the West Coast and I live on the East Coast. But I was like, you know, I'm gonna give it a shot. We'll see what happens. And long story short, you know, here I am. I've been working with the company for 2.5 months, almost 3 months now. And so like, I work remotely because I have not moved. I'm still in North Carolina, where I've always been, and they're still in California. But yeah, like, it has been an adjustment because I have never been one to keep to a strict schedule. And I'm also, you know, typically I would start work around like 1 at the earliest, usually more like 3. And I might do 4 to 6 hours of like actual, like, at my computer design work. Because I mean, a lot of being a surface designer, you're not always like making art. There's just like so much else that goes into it. And I didn't typically start, you know, my like at my computer workday until fairly late in the day. And then I don't know, every day was Monday, but every day was also Saturday. You know, it kind of didn't matter. The time was just like one continuous blob.
Yeah.
And so now, like, I have a schedule, and I've, you know, making work on a much more regular basis, you know, whereas I might, before, when I was a freelancer, I typically I was thinking in weeks, you know, it's like, what do I have to get done this week? You know, like, and now it's like, you know, what do I need to get done this first half of the day? And what do I need to get done the second half of the day? So it's been a huge shift in like how I have to structure my time. It's not bad. It's just very, it's just a big adjustment.
So deadlines are quicker, kind of.
Sure. Yeah.
And then you're designing for a stationery company. And so you're mostly doing all the design, like actual like illustrating, or do you do like trend looking? Are you like an art director, or are you a straight up designer, or what's your?
My role is senior designer, and so I just get to focus on the like making the artwork.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
it is
awesome. But yeah, I mean, I know from having worked in-house that the turnaround, and also working kind of closely with some of my freelance clients, that the turnaround can be really, really quick. And is that something that you was a surprising part of it, or just not surprising? Maybe it wasn't surprising, but more like, now that's my problem kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, it's like, I think, and I will say, all that play that I've spent, you know, many years doing, which I did do, like, it was like in my free time, sort of. And I feel like, you know, like you train for a marathon. I have spent the past like 10 years training myself to be this like workhorse. I mean, I don't mind it. It's not that taxing for me at this point because I have done it for so long. again, not to say that it wasn't an adjustment to have to, you know, there were days when I would push myself as a freelancer, but there were also days when I didn't. And now it's like, there's a little more balance, I guess. It's like every day I'm working at a very steady pace, one that might be faster than what I would do if nobody was pushing me, but also like, it means my work gets better quicker because I'm churning out work faster. And, you know, not every design has to be the best design I've ever made, because I'm going to be working on a different one tomorrow. And maybe that one will be the best design that I've ever made up to this point. And so, yeah, even though it is a fast pace, and, but it's interesting, like, that's not the thing that threw me the most. I think just having to like be on a schedule and like every day, like 3 a.m., 9 to 6, you know, like I'm like locked in on this one type of work. And I haven't, you know, kind of like you were saying earlier, like when you had a job, you're working for like Baby Gap, and like it took all of your creative energy. And like for me, I like so far, also the job is still really new.
Yeah.
So it might change, but like for like, I haven't done a lot of like personal work or stuff just for funsies, because like this job, it's very creatively fulfilling, but it's also very creatively demanding. And so there just isn't a ton of energy left over at the end of the day. But also that's kind of ideal in some ways. It's like, I love the work I'm doing and I love the company I'm working for, and I don't have to like I can do whatever else I want to do when my work is done. Now the problem is I don't know what else I want to do, because for the past forever I have all day, every day, all I do is like pattern and color and illustration and design. So I don't know what else to do. Mostly read, but you know, like I will figure out, you know, what the right balance is over time. Anytime, like it's been a while since I've had a 9 to 5 job, but every job I've ever had, it takes at least 6 months to like adjust.
Yeah, to start to get the rhythms of it.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, you know, I'm still in that very early stage. And even though it's very different than my life was 3 months ago, it's not bad different. It's just like, okay, like this is my life now. I do things this way now. And you know, again, like I was saying earlier, no one's making me do this. I'm extremely lucky to have this opportunity. And so on the days when it does feel hard, or it feels like, oh, I'm not used to this, or oh, I liked it better when I could just do whatever I wanted.
Yeah, a nap in the afternoon. Everyone loves a good nap. I get it. I get it. But obviously, yeah, there's so many benefits, not least of which is regular salary. Hey,
yes, financial security is something that I'm still confused by after, you know, 7 years of being like, hope I get paid soon, you know, and like that was one of those things that like, it's not that my attitude was truly that like whatever about it. It's just that like at a certain point, all that anxiety, it has to become background noise. Otherwise it will paralyze you, you know? So like, I did kind of finally I'm just like, okay, well, I just trust this is going to work out because I'm doing all the right things. And if not, there's plenty of backups that, you know, I can always go back and be a bank teller. Well, maybe not now, because I don't know if that's still a job with online banking and stuff, but you know, like, here's my 8 fallback options, you know, if it goes south. But yeah, like it is nice to not have that drumbeat of like just a low level of financial anxiety in the background. I'm like, okay, well, I don't have to worry about that. Again, there's trade-offs in other ways, but everything is always a trade-off. And for now, I'm happy. It's like, let's try on this one for size. Let's see what it feels like to make an actual adult salary like a person my age should be doing. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, I obviously that's a major benefit. And I like what you're saying about, you know, it does take time to kind of settle into that routine. One thing I've said about working for myself is that in all my previous jobs, you know, after a while, I did fall into a rhythm. Sure. And one thing that I think is one of my strengths is the ability to kind of systemize things. So like you know, work smarter, not harder, right? That has always been my thing, even working in-house. So I know what's coming up, the seasons, like, especially at the Gap, it's like, you know, you go through the 4 seasons of clothing. So it's like, Christmas, I mean, I don't have to worry, you know, we're doing spring now, we're doing summer, we know, so I know what's coming up. And After the first year, I know that there is, guess what? We're always going to do sharks in the summer.
Sure.
Yes, still to
Right.
this day, 10 years later, they're still doing sharks in the summer, because guess what? That's like a juvenile, like everyone loves sharks. Okay. So,
Right.
things like that. So then I'm looking out for sharks throughout the rest of the year, because I want to see a good shark. I'm not going to put myself under the pressure of finding the best new way to do a shark in the spring. I can see it in the fall and know I need a shark, for example. So, I've found ways to systematize and make things easier, more efficient for me. Now, working freelance, I don't really yes, obviously now after 10 years of doing it, I certainly have some systems in place, a lot of systems in place, but so up and down, and they're so not knowing what the next step is and the next path is. Like, am I going to find more, am I going to change directions? Like, am I looking for freelance clients? Am I trying to build my licensing portfolio? Oh wait, I know, let me just launch a YouTube channel and start interviewing everyone. I don't know. So it's like, I'm always needing to find new systems, and that is mentally taxing, right?
Yeah, totally. Yes. And I had the same or very similar, things that were vying for my attention, or constant questions like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? I don't know. It's what I am doing. So I guess I'll just move forward with this for today. And then tomorrow we'll see what happens tomorrow. But yeah, now, someone else is like, okay, we're working on this today, and here's what what I need you to do, ballpark, be here. And it is, kind of nice to have some of that pressure off so that I can just focus on making the work. But yeah, it's just a matter of rewiring my brain from the way it's been used to functioning, and the things I've been used to weighing each day for the past, 7 or so years. So this is a new way of, I'm trying now to be like, okay, I just have to focus on these things. And what does that mean? But I can't wait till I get to the point where you're so good at systems, and your Adobe Bridge class is always one that I will be so grateful to have, taken. But I can't wait to be at the point where I'm anticipating the way you were able to oh, here's what's coming. Because even though I've been aware of trends and working in that way for a long time, the stationery industry is similar to fashion, in that there's seasons. There's probably, I guess, more gradients
back to school versus holiday,
New Year, and you have all the moms, dads, grads, and then the spring holidays. And so all the holidays essentially are the kind of little divisions. And I didn't pay as much attention, because I there were a lot of holidays and things. I'm not designing for that, because I don't have to, and it's not my strong suit. I'm birthday, Christmas, those are my things, and that's what I'm going to do. Or just everyday stuff. And now I'm having to pay attention to all the stuff, and I'm kind of like you were saying, it's I'm on the lookout now for what I know this holiday exists, and we will be designing for it, so I'm going to be snapping up this inspiration, or try to. But so I'm still kind of working in the moment, and I don't have this stockpile of ideas that I've been collecting for myself. And luckily my our senior, or our creative director, is excellent, and she finds the most fantastic reference and stuff. But still, I want to be able to do that for myself too at some point.
And you 100% will. That's, I mean, that's definitely going to happen. But yeah, for sure, you're new to it, so it definitely takes some time to get on your feet and see how everything comes through. So my next question is, I know a couple of years ago, maybe more at this point, because again, what is time? You were studying for your master's in fine art. Tell me a little bit about why you decided to get into that, and what inspired you about that decision, and kind of because I know people always come to me of do I need to go? They think that they're less than if they haven't gone to art school, they're at a disadvantage in this industry. And yes, I've gone to art school, but I really don't believe that that's a thing, that you could, it's all about, you can learn from anywhere. But talk to me about your master's and how that came about.
Sure. I love talking about my experience so I'm going to back up just a little bit. So I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in design. And so I did go to art school like you, but everything I learned about my career as a service designer, everything except for how to use Illustrator, I learned after the fact, so like I went to art school, but that is not, it gave me a foundation. I don't want to, gloss over the fact that it gave me a solid foundation, but it would not had to have come from like formal training. And if it does, it could have come from a technical school. It didn't have to come from like a 4-year university. That's just how I have to have come by that foundation. But then again, everything, about my career as a surface designer was learned after the fact through informal or not the usual path. Like I didn't go to school to be an illustrator or to be a surface designer. Like I went to school, my focus was in design, and I ended up doing like web design and stuff, which has really nothing to do with what I do now. But I always loved school. And so part of what motivated me to go back was just like this, romantic attachment to the experience. Like I love learning, so I was I can go back and do that again. So part of it was just like an indulgence in my love of learning. But also like this I think speaks to just like how different everyone's creative journey is, and that's completely okay. Like I had a lot of questions. I always kind of saw myself as like too much of a designer to be a real artist, but too much of an artist to be like a serious designer. And, I've always kind of felt like a spork. Like I don't know which category I belong to. And for a long time, like I was bothered by that because I felt like I needed to choose, it's like you're a designer or you're an art, like you're a fine artist. And, the interesting thing about surface design is that it like perfectly straddles like those two worlds.
That is what I loved about it. Yeah.
But like in going back to get my MFA, like I think I just wanted to answer those questions. It's like, am I an artist or am I a designer? And I did not complete the MFA program. I got into it and I realized like the purpose of an MFA or the outcome of an MFA just didn't align with like what was important to me and what I wanted. But I don't think I could have answered that question without going through that experience, without like actually walking down that path a little way. And then it was kind of strange for me to quit something. I'm extremely stubborn and I don't quit things. I think that's the main ingredient for why I finished all those 100-day projects. It's just sheer stubbornness. But like I also it seems silly to double down on, like after my first year when I kind of realized, okay, like I just don't know if this is important to me. I don't know, like being like in the fine art program, like I wasn't doing surface design, I wasn't doing client work, I was doing like fine art, and I realized that like it didn't fit. Like it wasn't the thing that mattered to me. It wasn't where my like heart was at. And but again, I think I needed to like have that experience to like really know that, to be able to answer that question confidently. But then, so I was halfway through the program and I was just like, well, it was only a 2-year program, but it didn't make a ton of sense to me at the time to like, just so I wouldn't have to say that I quit something, or just so I could say, yeah, I finished this. Like, do I double down on like one more year of like losing momentum on my surface design and like pursuing this goal that like I just don't think this is the thing that's most important to me. Like I also like kind of like with getting an agent, I just didn't know what I didn't know about like the nature of an MFA, and there's just a lot of things that like I feel like I could only find out by learning the hard way. I learned almost everything the hard way, so that's very on brand for me.
There might not be an easy way to learn things. Let's be honest, right? I'm curious what the easy way is. I guess if you like really listen to people's advice and somehow it exactly lines up with your own experience, but it's like even people's advice like doesn't always line up with what your experience is, so it doesn't matter.
all that to say that like it's completely fine if you try something and it doesn't work, or if you try something and like it's not the right fit. That doesn't mean there's nothing wrong with you. It's just like, okay, well now I know that this isn't the right fit. And for me, it was such a relief to be like, oh good, one less thing I have to try
that off the list.
Goodness, like okay, bye. Like, and now I know for sure and I don't have to wonder, so it was nice to like take some of that uncertainty or questions, just get some questions answered. There might have been, again, it could have been an easier way to do that, but like that was just so happened to be the way that I went about answering that question. And like whatever way that you learn and whatever way that you get the experience that you're after is valid. Like there's no one way that's more valid than the other. And you don't have to do things the way that other people have done them. And if someone tells you that you do, well, I wouldn't listen to them.
I know, I agree. I do agree. I have like, so one of the sort of like benefits of my Start Your Service Pattern Business class is that I kind of have like a to-do list for each week that like really like, and it's supposed to be, the idea is like put your blinders on, because there's so much you can do, you know, there's obviously so many different options, and put your blinders on. And so in the very like introductory video, I'm like, look, I'm going to tell you what to do, but is that, you know, like obviously the, you know, that's so that you actually move forward and try something and do it, and don't get distracted by all the things. Just try doing these things. I'm not going to guarantee anything. And at the end, I say, now you've tried them. Hopefully that gave you some insight into things, and you know, you're gonna end up going your own way anyways, no matter what. But now you know some of the methods, and you've actually, hopefully, if you completed the to-do list kind of thing, you've actually tried them, so you know how that feels, basically. So
yeah, I mean, you're providing invaluable guidance, and you're offering guideposts and a path through the wilderness if someone wants to walk it, but you're not.
Right. And but I do totally understand, and that's something that I've kind of like wrestled with too, in thinking in moving forward with that course. It's like, you know, there is no prescription. We do know this, and so it's like I never want to market some. I don't want to be false in my marketing to be like, this is the one way, but I also want to be like, but also if you want to move forward, do try this way, at least try it. Like, you know, you're going to get somewhere, even if you don't go like all the way, like check, you know, whatever. But anyways, yeah, it's true. We have to walk the path to try to figure it out. So I love that insight. All right, we have to wrap things up. I have one last question. I don't know if you know, we can make it a short one, but confidence is my, you know, I don't know, I have lots of things that I'm into lately, but it's something I'm very interested in, and I'm really trying to, you know, remind people when I can that putting yourself and your art out into the world doesn't have to be terrifying and scary as it sometimes can feel. So I see, you know, I admire you and your work so much. And so I'm curious if you have any tips for staying confident in your art, even if sometimes that doesn't mean that art gets sold or gets picked, you know, whatever. Do you have any tips around that for people?
I think for me, again, it's a matter of like, what do you want to get out of your art and your journey as a creative? And I mean, obviously, like those of us who are doing it for a living or for a part-time living, like it's important to like be able to sell your work, but also like why, like if you're doing it like I don't know, I do it to feed my soul, like, you know, so and sometimes those Venn diagrams overlap and sometimes they don't, and I try not, like, to me the one, or like, what am I trying to say, the aspect of my work that gives me joy is more important to me than the work that sells. That's not to say that I'm not concerned about selling work, but I see them almost as like two sides of the same coin, and that it's okay if they're a little bit different, and it's okay if the stuff that brings me the most joy never sells. It's never commercially viable. Like I feel connected to it, and it resonates with me. And if it resonates with you, there's probably, it's going to resonate with someone else too. And, you know, someone else is going to be like, wow, that's really cool that you made that, or like, you should keep doing that. But I think fighting the urge to look for external validation, which is really hard, especially like with social media and all that kind of stuff. But just noticing when you feel joyful and when you feel excited, and like letting that be your guide and letting that be your only guide.
Yeah.
If it's not something that you have to do like for a client, or at least making space for that, like making space for like your only concern is like, do I feel excited about this? Does this feel joyful to me? And like, yeah, I don't know. it's not an easy question to answer. If it was, I mean, you probably would have
oh, by the way, can you just like solve all the world's problems while you're at it in the next 5 minutes?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just a matter of like knowing that your work doesn't have to make sense to other people. Your style doesn't have to be like the most iconic or recognizable. It might get there if you keep at it anyway. But I mean, the thing that ties all of your art and style and interest together is the fact that you chose it, that you liked it, that it brought you joy, and that it's something that is interesting to you. And so even if all the pieces don't make a lot of sense together or don't feel like they are cohesive, like over time that will change.
Yes. Yeah. That's totally true. And you're the best you that there is, right?
Exactly.
Like that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. No one, you know, we say this, I mean, I feel like that's kind of a bit of a trope of like, you know, that no one can be you. But that's true. And that is like the guiding principle. You know, a lot of people come to me about like signature style. And I mean, first of all, I try to reassure people you don't necessarily need to have one, but also I'm like, and looking at your work, yeah, I see a through line totally, because we don't always see it for ourselves, but
yeah, I think that's a good point. Like if you're having trouble finding that confidence or maintaining it, you know, maybe ask someone like, what do you like, what common threads do you see here? Or like, are you seeing any patterns? Because it is really hard to like look at your own work without all the baggage that you're bringing to the table. Not to like get someone else's approval, but just to ask like, what do you see when you look at my work? And like, because people will come to me all the time and be like, oh, I saw this, and I'm like, made me think of you. And I'm like, well, tell me about that. Like, what about this made you think of me? And like, yeah, I don't know. I think just realizing that you have a lot of agency in the process. And, you know, if you don't like something, if you don't like your work, you're not excited about it, like take a minute to think about why that is, and what work are you drawn to, and like what things are you, it doesn't have to be art, like what things in the world interest you, like what, you know, makes you excited, and just focus on those things and take notes. That's not, like I really need to be better about like journaling and writing things down, because I think as a creative, everything I do is so visual. But I see a lot of artists who like make notes, and I'm like, so simple, but also like a brilliant way to just like retain information and be like, I noticed this thing, or this was important to me, or what have you, because that I think can also help you like find your voice and stick to it, you know, when you're making notes about the things that inspire you or interest you, and then you have it and you don't have to try to think, what was it that I found inspiring?
There was something there. Yeah, exactly. I gotta write everything down.
But yeah, like I also think like putting into words what you're reacting to just cements that information like in your brain a little better. And so I don't know, like
I love that.
But like you said, you know, you're the best version, or you're the best you there is. You know, no one else can fill your shoes, and that, you know, you're in control. It's up to you what that looks like, and to just embrace that freedom and that power.
I love that. I love that. That's such an important message. Well, Nadia, I could talk to you all day long, but some of us have jobs they need to do.
Too, yeah.
I also work. Thank you. Just in case I'm interested. I have to remind my husband of that, because he'll steady see me like, what you just chilling around? I'm like, okay, I do some work, I promise. But I will put your links in the description. Follow Nadia on Instagram. She might not be, I don't know if you're as active lately, but even just go back to her old projects and see all the beautiful work that she's done, because you're a true talent for sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Silver, and I've been a professional surface pattern designer for almost 2 decades. When I left my in-house design job to run my own business, I had a lot of industry experience, but building a strong client base still took way longer than I expected. And part of that was because there's both a lot and not enough information out there about how to do this. You've been down the Google rabbit hole, you know. Fast forward to now, when I sometimes turn down client work because I'm booked solid. It's for that exact reason that I created Start Your Surface Pattern Business. In this course, I help you cut through the overwhelm and give you a super clear path to becoming a paid surface pattern designer. I provide you with the tools you need to focus on your goals Get yourself set up so you make a killer first impression, and then find and pitch the clients that are right for your artwork. And I do it in the most straightforward, simple way possible. Nothing extra, just distraction-free lessons and to-do lists, plus insights from an industry insider that will help you get the confidence you need to move forward. The most exciting thing is hearing from my students about landing their first client or licensing contract as they start taking the proactive approach that I am such a fan of. You don't need to spend years building a portfolio of hundreds of patterns and illustrations, and you don't need to get stuck comparing yourself to artists on Instagram. What you need is to take concrete steps forward to build the career that you want. And Start Your Surface Pattern Business is all about taking imperfect action. If you've got a portfolio of designs that you've been building and you're ready to level up, enroll to get started today. Thanks so much for watching my video. Be sure to subscribe and share with your surface pattern design friends.